it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We will be talking about running, mental health, youth sport burnout, specialization in sports, motivation, encouragement, coaching, parenting, sleep, nutrition, really anything that you can think of that we as parents or coaches or just runners can do to help our young athletes. In today's episode, I am talking to Ed Brittingham from the Bryn running company in Westchester. So anyone who is local knows that that is our local running store. So obviously we are talking about shoes today. Being as my mind is on shoes and feet, I'm currently rolling out my own feet because they have been bothering me, which probably means I need to take a trip to the running store for some new running shoes. But today we talk all about shoes, feet, running. He goes through the process of how they help runners and walkers find the right shoes, talks about shoe recommendations kind of for everybody, the importance of having the right running shoe, different problems that shoes can help with. We talk about really just how they help kids find the right shoes. We talk about his experience with running, how he started, races he's been doing, kind of what he's up to now, and the awesome running community that he is a part of and helps, kind of really build up in our area. So we really get into some awesome stuff about shoes. And I mean, any runner will know that we love talking about shoes. So this episode is a little longer, just because I got so excited talking about shoes as well. Even after we were done recording, I think I asked like 20 more questions about shoes. So I think this is a really great one just for anybody who has questions about shoes, feet, running, or you just like hearing people talk about shoes. But if you wanted to talk about your running journey, kind of how you started running, anything interesting in between, races you liked, didn't like, things you learned, coaches that were inspiring, and kind of where you are now with running.
Yeah, of course. So my running journey, I grew up in Delaware County and grew up playing a lot of team sports. So I would do the baseball, soccer, basketball. And, there was that part of the sport, the running part maybe was not always in my wheelhouse. So I hit a point somewhere around 6th or 7th grade that I went, hey, I want this to be something that is a better part of those sports. So I went out 7th grade track. I ran the 100 and the 200 because honestly, they were maybe the shortest distance for me to like get into the sport. And I had a lot of things with my running that I learned from that first year or two of middle school, just doing it. Just getting out there and putting the runs in. And it was really going into high school where I got the bug a bit because it became an activity of all the different sports I would do. It was the most straightforward. I got out of it what I put into it. And I started catching a little bit of those, lessons you can get from each run that you do. So, when I got into high school, I was fortunate enough to have, good people that were older than me that guided me along the way early on. Had a few injuries early in high school that actually helped me get into, a run specialty store like ours. I got my first pair of shoes from Bryn when I was a freshman. And from there, just continue to plug away. It was something I was really passionate about, definitely my junior and senior year. I was fortunate enough to continue on with it in college. I ran at Westchester University, ran the 5K, 10K, ran conferences a few times. And, when I got done school, took a break from it and was able to come back to it afterwards as almost like a new runner, but also still with a lot of that same experience. And I've carried that now into running races on the roads. I've done 2 marathons. My last was Philadelphia Marathon in 2019. I ran 2:35 there. And, just continue to have fun with it. I was just down in Atlanta this past week for the Peachtree 10K, which is one of the biggest in the world. So, just trying to carry that spear along from the younger Eddie, who was, seeing what running was giving back to him in his life. And, it's been a great outlet. And, it's something I really identify with a lot still till this day. And obviously working in a running store, it's very cool to work with your passion every day.
So when, and I'm sure you probably can recognize that you're very good at running, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, I'm always appreciative, especially now, if someone doesn't know my backstory, because when I started in middle school, it was rough goings for sure. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a get out of what you put into it thing. But yeah, I'm confident enough to say it's going pretty well.
Yeah, well, so, and I don't know if you know this, but I did what is it, the 5K winter series that just happened with
Yeah,
my
remember seeing you
son.
out there?
Yeah, okay, I was gonna say, like, I was like, oh, go Ed, but I'm like, he has no idea, like, lady who's super slow pushing the stroller,
I
right?
would see you posting about it, so I was like, oh, we're definitely out there. Some of those mornings are cold enough for you're jutting in and jutting out, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But so that was the only time I've seen you race, but I didn't know it was you at first. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I was telling my dad because I think he ran the last two with us too. And I'm like, there is this guy there. He is going to lap us. It is so awesome to see. Because it's like, running, when you see people who are awesome, you're just like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, that's just so inspiring. Like, I love
Mhm.
being able to run with those people. So I was talking about you and then I was like, oh my gosh, I know who that is. So that was super cool. And it's, I just assume whenever you see someone who's, a standout who, still races with passion and, really you can tell like putting everything into it, you just assume like it was always an easy road for them with running. So, it's cool to hear that it wasn't just like, oh yeah, I put on a pair of shoes one day and I ran super fast and kind of never looked back.
Mhm.
Um, so that's really cool. So you said you got your first pair of shoes from the Bryn Mawr running store in high school, and it's kind of like a full circle because now you're the owner, that's right, of the Bryn Mawr running store in Westchester.
I manage it. So
Manager.
yeah. And we have a really strong team of managers between all of our stores. The manager who was working at the Bryn Mawr store when I went to high school, she still manages there. So they it's awesome. Our two owners, Bob and Sean, are the best.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So can you tell us just, I guess, like an overview of like simple tips for buying shoes? Because I've been to the running store and any runner knows like when people are posting on Facebook or whatever, like, where should I get running shoes? Everyone's always like, go to your local running store. They will help you. They know what to do. Um, but I guess just like, especially for kids, because I know that kids are usually, you'll see like can run in their Crocs, they run in Uggs, they run in cowboy boots. They, like they will be running around in any shoe, but like we really don't want them to be doing that, I'm guessing. So just kind
Mhm.
of just some general tips, I guess, to start for when you're buying shoes, especially for kids or new runners.
Of course, yeah, and with kids especially, we focus on two main aspects when we're getting shoes fitted for anybody. You know, First would be the function of the shoe. So to not get super technical, but to give you just a general idea, we're looking to see when that foot contacts and toes off the ground, you know, is there any force being applied more on one side of the foot versus the other, whether it's the foot flexing in a little bit more, or someone who has a little bit of a higher arch and maybe is favoring to the outside. And sometimes when you see people like kids, young adults that are like they can run in anything, that might just be the way that their foot naturally, moves, that they can go in whatever. But the thought and the quality that's put into running shoes nowadays, and especially kids shoes, it's cool to see a lot of them now are that like a same adult takedown, like the quality of it's there. You know, it helps for people to come into, like you said, a run specialty store, and it's on us to have not only the right types of shoes to fit somebody for, but also like a big thing with kids is definitely sizing, not only with like the foot growing and the growth spurts that happen, especially as you're getting to like late elementary or middle school. But, you know, we also want to make sure that there's enough room just in general for the natural swelling of our feet. So it's one of those things I would say is a tip. If it fits like a glove in the store, it's going to hurt your feet as you're wearing them, throughout the day, because there's no room for that foot to grow. There's not a lot to our feet, right? So, you think about you're doing push-ups and you can feel like the blood flow going to your arms and your arms getting heavy. It's not to the same degree with your feet, but when you're walking, running, anytime you're active, just wearing the same pair of shoes throughout the day, you can definitely feel the difference from beginning to end. So, function and fit are two pillars that we really, make sure when we first have customers in that we figure that all out on the floor. We'll go through if anything ever bothers someone in particular, like make sure, like, another tip I would say when someone comes into a store like ours, any feedback is good for us. I think having that communication of, we're obviously, well versed in seeing what we're seeing, when someone walks without their shoes and giving a recommendation that way. But, in the end, your feet are more unique than any of the shoes. We're trying to find the right category. We're trying to find the right size. And then from there, it's the preferred experience or feel of the shoe, for that particular person. So for kids, especially, I mean, it's very important for us, because a lot of the, like, whether you have an overpronated foot strike, which is that flex in, or you supinate, or you're neutral, none of those are bad. But it's something that you get from genetics. We'll see people like, whole families like, oh, we all have higher arches, or we all have lower arches, which is just one aspect of the foot strike. We just want to make sure that, like, when I first went to the store at Bryn Mawr, the type of foot strike I have is something where I had a little bit more of that flex in. Not a bad one to have, but most important one for us to address. So yeah, if we get function and fit right, then it's personal preference on feel. So getting the right size is key. And then, again, any feedback, especially if they've done, say they've been coming out to the run club, and, end of the season, I was noticing, this was bothering me, that was bothering me. Because we can also go through, there's more than just the shoes that can help you stay healthy. Like, we try to intermingle, like, little exercises and talk about single leg balance a lot, helps too. But yes, function and fit are the two biggest things that I recommend people. Function is what our job is for, and also fit. But again, any feedback is always helpful for us as staff.
Okay, great. Yeah. So you answered some of the questions I was like thinking of having, like, can your feet change, I guess, as you're growing up? Like, I know not just the size, but do you see changes in the supination, and I forget all the other ones?
Yeah, yes. I mean, the way I describe it is, we'll see some of that. Like, if we address any, thing that we like, functional need we see early on, we do see as time goes on that, that set, like the overpronated, that roll in, that's one of the most important ones for us to address. If we catch that early on, we have seen as time goes on, like, we can go with a little bit less and slowly ease somebody out of it, and that's a big thing for us, is when in doubt, we do want to let your foot move as naturally as possible. So I think it's a mix of, sometimes, like, I mean, it's definitely a mix of having a good shoe, plus just some of the inherent strengthening that comes as you get older, and you start working in, say you're really serious with your running and you want to do drills, or you start working in, like, body weight exercises, as as you progress up. I think early on it's just enjoying the running and having fun. But yeah, we do see over time there can be some of that, like, correction to being more neutral, but it starts with us making sure we get a good shoe right away for them. So that, and yeah, so we've seen it. Yeah.
Okay. Kind of maybe along with that, but maybe not totally. So people coming in, I know you can correct some things with the shoes, like you're saying. Are there common complaints that you hear that are something that could be shoe related? Either you're wearing the wrong shoes, or just you need to wear a different kind of shoe? Or, like, can you notice, like, if someone's complaining about their knees, it could be a shoe thing, or it could be a strength thing? Are there common ones like that?
Yeah, for sure. You have, some of the most common we'll get with the younger kids is, yeah, general knee pain or shin pain. What that has to do with, in a lot of cases, is, the kids coming in with the really light, flexible shoes, and, the ones that, if you remember when the Nike Free was very big, the ones that make your foot, do a little bit more of the work. The initial goal with a lot of those shoes was to provide some inherent strengthening, but not to be your everyday. But I had a pair myself. I understand they are comfortable, but not something I would spend a lot of time in. So that's usually what the most common one we'll see with kids is. It's more impact related in that case. Like, that's something where we at least know, okay, you made it into our store. All the shoes that we have are going to be the quality that is going to put up with the running you're doing, and that they're going to hold up well, and you won't have as much of that. But sometimes it's also having the sizing. I think that's our typical recommendation is, wherever we go up, or wherever we measure your foot at, we go up at least a half size. But it's not uncommon for us to go up even a full size with with kids, because sometimes that width isn't as proportionate to the length. So yeah, I mean, that as far as, like, whether that's the right shoe or not. I even try to, mention a lot on the floor as well, especially this time of year when it's a little warmer, your foot does swell a bit more. Having good moisture wickening socks is key to preventing against blisters and preventing from those feet getting sweaty. That's another thing that when we're talking about sizing, we try to just mention that. But yeah, I mean, more common than not, it's the pain on the coming up from just the force at the lower legs that a good shoe is going to prevent against. That's probably the most common that we see.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it was in high school, I switched, and I don't remember what brand of shoe I switched to, but I got new shoes and I had horrible I felt it was like shin splints for the week that I practiced in them. And then I was like, I'll just wear my old shoes for a little bit, switch shoes, and was completely fine. And I never had that issue again. That's when I was like, oh, wow, the shoes actually matter. Right. And I had no idea up until then, because I mean, I was like not a serious runner up until high school. So it was like, you wore whatever shoes were cool or something.
Right. Well, that's why, when we get people who come in are particular about brands, or they said somebody recommended something to me, like, my training partner in college, we were the same type of feet. We switched shoes one day to try each other's out. And I was like, I don't like yours, you don't like mine. The reason why we didn't like each other's shoes was the reason why the other person liked them. So, that's where we try to have options, especially if someone's like, oh, I want to just have this particular brand. So like, would you be open to trying some similar stuff? Because you never know until you really put it on and get a feel for, like, you probably got those new shoes initially and went, oh man, like these will be okay. And right away you're like, oh no, okay, this is not what I was looking for.
Right. No, exactly. I want to go back a little bit. You mentioned the Nike Freeze, and I was thinking actually wasn't going to bring up a Born to Run and barefoot running, but then I was like, well, I can't help myself sometimes, and you're a shoe person. But not getting completely into that, but I'm sure you see, kind of all over the spectrum of people who are into the barefoot running or the sandals or really minimal shoes. And I just watched some Nike documentary about Salazar, but I saw the Vaporflies and I was like, why is this making me want to go get them? I've never been into those thick shoes. But I guess, like, since there's that broad spectrum now, do you have a direction you generally lean to? It kind of sounded like you were saying, away from the Nike Free type minimalist shoes, but I mean, I guess it depends on the people, or is it kind of, a philosophy of like, we really think this is just the better way to go?
I mean, it's a great question, because there's just certain shoes for what, certain things you're using them for. So we gravitate towards that meeting in the middle of those types of shoes. A performance oriented shoe like that Vaporfly isn't going to hold up that well. You can use it on a race day if you're doing the roads. It's crazy to think that the racing shoes now, when I was like, probably when we were both still in school, they were like, so much thinner, and it was all about saving on weight that way. And now they have literally a limit on how thick the sole can be. So, it's very interesting, but, there's shoes made for, people who are going to maybe do more like long runs and the recovery runs. And then there's those performance oriented shoes, but especially for, kids and people who are just getting started in the sport. We had so many people, and we were super grateful, especially as we were coming out of that initial, lockdown a couple of years ago, that said, hey, like, I just started running and I don't really know where to go. And they, would ask about the performance shoes. Like, you need to just have a good core pair. Like, we call it like your workhorse shoe. So moderate amount of cushion, versatile enough that you can use them for times when you're doing a little bit more running, and going easy, times that you may be doing some pickups, like maybe you're doing a workout, or you're doing some sort of intervals where you're running quick for a little paces with recovery in between, where it's not going to feel too super unnatural for that, but just a good versatile pair. And then as you're growing into the sport, like, we had a lot of people were like, hey, let's start you off with just your everyday pair that's going to work for everything. If you wanted to cycle 2 pairs, this is the benefit of it. And then as they got into it, say you're training for a race, I would always race with the racing shoe, and that's something early on, it's not a necessity, but it's more so when you get into the track races and things like that, saves on weight, again, that shoe's made specifically for those things. But yeah, it's, to answer your initial question, it's just having that, like, just go-to pair. And that's with our kid selection, that's what we stock. It's the adult takedowns from the most popular shoes from those brands, as far as most popular in the sense that they work for a variety of running, so that you don't have to get like 3 different shoes. Yeah, you have the option if you're into it, but yeah, I mean, it's something where like just that core moderate amount of cushion, like, yeah, that workhorse trainer. That's what we recommend people starting off with.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was assuming you were going to say, because I feel like us as runners, we start to just collect a bunch of shoes that we don't need just because we get so excited about all of them. But it's like, why do I have so many?
Right.
All right, there's two directions I want to go. First, since you mentioned like racing shoes, and more so you said like, once you're into like on the track and things like that, but what, I was going to say like what age, but I guess like what level of seriousness do you think it would make sense for like kids or someone to be buying like a racing shoe? And then I guess what kind of racing shoe specifically?
Well, it depends on what they're doing race wise, whether it's cross country, track, or we don't see. I feel like unless you're doing stride or girls on the run, we don't see a lot of training for like the 5K. But like for cross country and for like the running camps, like I would say the level would be, say you have your really competitive, like if you're competing at like a regional CYO championships, that's usually the turning point for a lot of those athletes. They go, hey, I've just been running in my sneakers all season. I'm going to run this race. And then, for the track, it would be track spikes. Cross country, they're cross country spikes. And the main difference is the cross country ones have a rubber bottom to them, to have protection for when you're out, like, grass, rocks, roots, wherever you're running. And then track ones have a little bit of a firmer bottom. But I would usually say right around the middle school, 7th, 8th grade is, if you haven't gotten spikes yet or racing shoes yet, that's where I would start considering them, because that's where you have the opportunity to, especially in our area, Chester County and the Chestmont League create a lot of opportunities for younger athletes to run, like events like Oakmore Relays, where, there'll be all sorts of teams put together. And I think that's end of August, beginning of September. That's a good one over at Stetson Middle School. And yeah, I mean, like cross country spikes would help you, but I don't think it's in like necessity until we really start that conversation kind of middle school, right around like 7th, 8th grade.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm assuming you probably don't run into this issue a lot because kids' feet just continue to grow. But I know like us as adult runners, we always have like the number of miles we're putting on our shoes before we need to get another one. And most people are like very set on it has to be this number. And it's not always the same for different people, but is there, and kids usually aren't tracking their miles, but I guess, is there like very obvious signs of like them needing new shoes, like they don't fit anymore or like holes and stuff, but is there a better way for us to be able to tell like if, they happen to not grow out of them, but maybe they do need new shoes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question, because if you're not tracking each mile on the shoe, some of the aesthetic cues that we look for is when the bottom of the sole of the shoe is really smooth. Think about it like a stone in the stream, where enough water's ran over it, where the edges of it aren't as defined. It's more smooth. That same thing, like tread on your tires. When that starts to become one flat piece, especially for the people who stretch them out a little bit further than we'd recommend, when they wear through that outsole or that colored material that's on the outside part of the shoe, the most protective and usually the most durable part of the shoe, when that starts to wear through and you see the foam underneath, yeah, you've been due for some shoes for sure. And besides that, sometimes also a little bit of creasing. If you think about it, like the sole itself, each time your foot comes down, it compresses and then it'll re-expand. So when those creases are showing to the point that you look at your shoe and you go, that's definitely a lot flatter than when I had it. That's another way that you can pick it out. And we try to recommend, especially if you're running, maybe you have spurts, like you have like a season, like the end of the summer, that through like the classes I have at the end of August, like I have my shoe from June to August, and then when I get to the fall, grab a new pair. And you might still have a little bit left in that older pair, but that's just the safest way to stay ahead of running in a shoe that all of a sudden one day it's super worn down and you get back from practice and you go, wow, my legs are really bothering me. And it's a shoe that's worked for you for a while. So you think, oh, like it's not the shoe, and you go down this rabbit hole, and then a couple weeks later we have you in, we fit you, and you go, oh, I needed new shoes. That I already feel the difference. So yeah, I think just staying ahead of it and trying to phase in new pairs, especially with the kids' shoes. They have good value. I mean, obviously, you know, there are just like the adult shoes, like varying levels of cushioning. Like, and we factor that in based off like, what you're using them for, what you prefer. And also say you are doing a full season of running. We'll again lean on stuff that's we know is going to at least last you through that season, but then say, hey, at the end of the season, I would recommend coming in and getting a new pair, even if you're not going to do as much running over the winter, just so that you have, you have your bases covered. It's the most important piece of equipment in the sport of running. So as long as you're staying ahead of your shoes getting worn down and seeing that like smoothness on the bottom, you're usually, pretty safe from any sort of injuries or setbacks from the shoes being worn down.
Yeah, no, that's perfect because again, like I said, people are probably outgrowing them before they always get to that, but kids are also really rough on their shoes. So it's good to know like what the cues are in terms of needing new ones.
Yeah, if they wear them like, for everyday shoes, obviously they're going to wear through quicker too.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask because I know like I am very particular about my running shoes. I only wear them for runs. Like even if I'm driving to wherever I'm going to go run, like I'll wear Crocs and then I get there and then I put my running shoes on because I'm like, I just don't wear them for anything else. Do you recommend that for kids as well? If obviously they're able to, like their parents are able to have multiple pairs of shoes.
Yes. Yeah, definitely a pair of school pair, and then your shoes that you just run in for sure. Cause then the everyday is totally understandable. You're not going to track them as much, but that's also too, a lot of times by the time those get beat up, it's more the aesthetics of like, I can't wear these because they're just like destroyed than anything else. So, but if you save the pair for running, that's okay if they get a little dirty. They're getting made to be used and be active in. So yeah, you're also splitting up the uses so that they can work well for what they're doing. But yeah, a pair, if they have the ability, like pair of shoes for school or for everyday kick around, and the pair dedicated solely for running is what we recommend.
Yeah, no, awesome. Because I know, like, I don't even know when I started doing that, but I was like, I'm very particular. And I feel like it just makes your running shoes really like special. And then like also in your brain, like I put my running shoes on and that's when I'm like getting to work.
Yeah. The
But that actually,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. That's it. Yeah.
But that actually made me think of my next question. So, and I'm trying to think of like how to phrase it. I should have thought of this earlier. I feel like in all your answers, you kind of already explained like all the reasons why getting the right running shoe is important and all those things. But I know kids and everybody can be stubborn, and like we still see kids who are wearing like their Air Force Ones or some kind of Velcro shoe or some other shoe, and they're, they don't have any complaints yet. And they're like, I can still move around, I can still do this. And, or the kids that won't tie their shoes. Do you have like a simple explanation for, I guess, like more geared towards the kids? Because I think most of the time parents can be on board with like getting their running shoes, but to explain to them like why it's important for them to wear running shoes and also like to tie them and wear them properly. Because I know like it's obvious when they're feeling like they're hurting or they're tired, but some kids just, their bodies are kind of like, but eventually down the road, I'm sure it'll matter. Did that even make sense as a question?
It does. Yeah. So, you have like a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, and they go, what do I need different shoes for? These are my shoes. They're just my shoes. I do everything in them. And the way I would explain it to them is, there's something about getting a pair of running shoes when that's the activity that you're into that unlocks the whole sport. You think you have the right shoes and you're they're good. And I'm sure you're physically able to run in these, but it's trying to, positively expound upon the experience that we've all had of getting a pair specifically for running that makes you go, oh, okay. And, it's trying to make it fun, just like what you guys do with the run club and having the games. It's, having the fun colors. It's something about like a running shoe that when you're trying to explain it to somebody who like they've been like, I can kind of just do whatever. It's okay. Like, I understand that if we had you, like if you had a pair of running shoes that even if you're still doing whatever otherwise, like you at least had the confidence that like this is making me run better, even if it's not necessarily like that, it's going to though. It's just like when we have people who do the races and you go, the racing shoes are automatically going to run faster. Running shoes, you're automatically going to enjoy, the running that much more. And it might not be like, blowing their mind initially when they get them, but it is something that when I think it's so cool to have an opportunity like this to start the sport out early on. Like I said, I kind of fell into it a little bit more with doing team sports, and there was an aspect of it, but it's a lifelong journey. It's a sport that you can always come back to, or continue with throughout life. And like when I say it unlocks the sport, it's tough to explain to someone who's younger, but if there's any way that we can say, hey, like, you're not thinking about you running 5-10 years from now, but think about how cool it would be if you took this right step into and try these shoes out, and then how much it can help you running now, which can help you enjoy it in the future too. So I think it's just saying, give them a shot. They might not be the cool shoes, but you're wearing for running, and they are pretty cool. Like, it's just different, especially as kids are getting into the sport.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And yeah, I think it's hard, especially for kids, to have like that foresight, right? Like you're saying, but the other thing that I think is so important for them to see and know is like, there are people who love running, who do it and do it awesome, and aren't the professionals we see on TV. Cause again, like that can be so hard to relate to, but it's like, it's not just your mom who runs down the street. It's not just the neighbor who's doing that, but like people like you, like, you're not in school anymore. You don't have any other reason to race besides you love it and you still work really hard and you do so well. So like, it's nice that there are so many different people you can point to and be like, look, like there is lifelong running, and it can be exciting. It can be competitive still. And you can go so many different directions with it.
Right. And it's such a, strong community too. I think that's one of the things when I first went into our Bryn Mawr store, the first time I ever got fitted for shoes, running, and I grew up in Aston, and our high school, like, it wasn't really that big there. So I gotten really into it on my own. And it was the first time I had walked in somewhere, and Villanova had just had this athlete, Bobby Curtis, who had won the national championship. And again, like, you're getting into it and you're looking at those people and you're like, oh, these, like, I walked to the Bryn Mawr store, they knew him. But then the coolest thing about the sport at any level, and this is why I think in a lot of ways continue to do it, is it's not just you, it's that, person that does see you run and gets inspired by it, or it's your family that gets to come out to your races and root you on, and it's your friends that, that might be your thing, and then they have something different they do, but they're like, man, it's so cool that you run. And you never know, like, you could be the beacon whenever they decide to involve that in their health and wellness journey, that, that wasn't the intended purpose, but you get to be like that person who shares the experience. Because I think it's the coolest thing about running is, if you're out of practice, especially the teams, some of the teams in this area are huge. I was just at Henderson's practice this morning, and, over 100 kids, guys and girls combined. And, the coaches there, and, I think a lot of the coaches in our area, like yourself included, it's being able to, like, have that group atmosphere, but you're really coaching individuals, and in a way that it's cohesive. And no matter where you're at running wise, we're all feeling the same way. We're all pushing each other the same way. I used to use the term, especially when it's hot like this in the summer, it's a shared suffering sometimes, but the lessons you get out of from that, you can get a lesson from every single day that you run. And like, I know that's something that, doesn't always feel that way, but it is really, really cool to be that person for other people now. Like, I have more and more people reach out that'll be like, hey, like, I'm taking it up, or, like I have my cousins, like, you're on another level, but I can always look ahead of me too. And, I think when I first got really into the sport, it almost was like, it was so crazy. I went, oh man, but there's some people who've been running when they're, 7, 8, 9 years old, but didn't change the fact that I got to get out the door, I get to get out the door really, get my runs in, and just continue on with it. I hope to be doing this as long as possible. And the standard of what will be good for me will change as time goes on. And that's totally fine, because I know the feeling I'm going for. So that doesn't go away.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you are a huge part of, I think, the running community in the area. I know you've been so helpful to me with, like, sharing all the information about Run Club. I know the Women Running Westchester group that Danielle is always singing your praises of how helpful you are. So, because I've run with them a couple of times, but you also have you guys do a couple group runs a week, right? And you have, do you just recently had, was it New Balance or someone just came to one of your group runs? Am I like
Yeah,
getting?
that was this morning. Yep.
Okay. You want to talk about your group runs a little bit, just because we kind of got on the topic of running community and stuff?
Of course, yeah, and I think it's a great thing to talk about, to show that, as you go through the different levels that we grow up doing with, school, like this is something where the groups have such a big range. So like if parents or, just anybody locally is interested in joining them, they're free to do. There's run 6 days a week. So the local timing company website, our former store owner at Westchester, when it was Chester County, Kevin Kelly, he will put together, workouts that people can do during the week on Tuesdays and Fridays, and then also a recommended distance for a long run. But, most of the runs outside of those are easy runs, made to be accommodating to all paces. You're usually going to see people anywhere between 8 to 9 minutes on average per mile. And, obviously there'll be people that'll say, hey, like, that's a little bit faster for my easy runs. But I always say is you never know if there's gonna be somebody there to run with until, you show up. And I think that's why it's been cool to have more and more options for people who maybe are doing more run walk, or, are just getting like introduced to it. But most of the group runs that are done associated with our store are early in the morning. They'll either meet at the store or they'll meet at the Westchester Country Club near the tennis courts where the parking lot's there. And then we do have one evening run on Wednesday nights that we meet at the store. We've been doing a lot of events around those runs as well. It was really great having New Balance out this morning at the track, because those guys are up early. They're starting their workout at 5:50 a.m. But you talk to most people in that group, that's the time they can do it before their family gets up, when school gets started, being able to get everybody out the door. Some people even start working out earlier once we get into September at like 5:30, 5:15. And it's really cool. If you run through Westchester, any morning during the week or on Saturdays, like even if you're not in those groups, there's a lot of little pockets of people that are out. Like it's more than you think. So it's been cool. More and more people have been gravitating towards the group runs. And I always say you just got to get out there one time just to see what the difference is, even if you end up going by yourself. Like I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Like I worked out by myself this morning, and I was talking to Kevin Kelly, and I was like, I just love being out here. I just love the energy, and everybody's encouraging. And yeah, it's a great way to meet local runners, and we keep it fun too. So yeah, they've been great. Yeah, the group runs have been doing really well.
I was going to say, I feel like I see pictures all the time, and it is always, some group. It's not ever just like one person, you have lots of people, everybody looks like they're having fun, and it looks like you guys do some cool things for the runs too, which is really awesome. So yeah, I've never made it to one, but I'm still hoping we'll be able to at some point.
They're always there. I mean, I worked Wednesday nights for 3 years, both when I finished school, because I started working there when I was a college senior, and then when I got done school, it was living back at home, and I was commuting. That was like my social thing I did all week. And it took, I probably, took a few years before I really started coming out to the runs myself. Like that would be, like I said, I'd usually be working. Yeah, once I started going, I'm like, oh, this is nice. Cause it's just, it's nice to speak, like even if you're not with somebody, like running with somebody who's as into it as you, or they're more into it, there's always a common thread. And, a good easy run, if you are able to get out there and have a conversational pace, you're doing it the right way. So a lot of times it's like, I'm getting getting a workout in, but I'm hanging out with my friends and, we're cruising around town, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah. So they're always there for you.
Yeah, no, I love like the idea of running in a group, and it's so nice that there's so many different options, around here, which is really cool. Before I let you go, well, first, do you have anything else about shoes? Because I feel like I was like trying really hard to make sure I asked all the right shoe questions, but as you know way more about shoes than I do.
Well, I mean, the only thing I'd reiterate is Run Specialty is the place to go. I mean, I think it's cool in our area, having all of our stores. You go to Bryn Mawr Media or our store, Delaware Running Company is a part of our family of stores. Like even out in Emmaus, we have a store. we're talking about, footwear and evolving and, progressing our fitting philosophy every month, every year. It's just something we're all into. So just I just want to reiterate, definitely going to anybody like at our store, we're all well versed in fitting people. Like that's the key with shoes. And again, right type of shoe for your foot strike and right size. Those are the two keys. But yeah, I mean, besides that, we're always just making sure we have the size range. I think that's been the thing now, is us just continuing to check with our brands, make sure we have options, so when anybody comes in we can get them fitted. But yeah, just that's main thing I reiterate.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk running just a little bit, because I feel like I started with running, and then because I was so like, I need to make sure I talk enough about shoes, I like so quickly got off that topic. But I wanted to talk to you more about if you have a favorite race, and I know it might be hard, or like favorite races that you've ever done. And then also I wanted to ask you if you currently have a running coach, or if you just do your own runs, because I know you said you ran by yourself this morning.
Yeah, good question. So favorite race. So, I mean, the race I just did, Peachtree, will definitely be up there as far as, as one I always had on my bucket list to do. I have a few others like that I'm hopeful to do in the next couple of years, but probably favorite all-time race, because it has had a place in my whole running journey, would be the Media 5 miler, actually. So that was in the middle of June. It's usually like right at the kickoff of summer. I believe this year was on a Saturday before that Tuesday. And it's one of my favorites because, especially this year, was one of the best. It was the highest finish I ever had in the race. I've gotten to run it competitively a few years since college, but the first race I ever did there was actually going into my sophomore year of high school. And this is an example of, can run in any shoe, but it wasn't exactly the best time. I couldn't find my running shoes. I had no idea where they were. It's the first time I'm doing it. My high school coach challenged me and said, I'm gonna beat you on this. And I'm like, I'm not letting this guy beat me. So I remember, like, this was a big, like, well, I probably should focus on, like, some of the stuff I want to change. I had like a cotton t-shirt, like a Penn State football shirt, my dad's Air Monarchs, like basketball shorts. I was all over. And I had already, like, I'd known I had good shoes and all this stuff. And it was kind of my, like, almost dip back and like, oh, like, what was it like before? And then that was, I think ever since then I'm sticking to all my running gear, and I got to find those shoes. But I remember beating him at that race. And even though I didn't run anything crazy fast, obviously when you're in high school, 5 miles is pretty far to like push yourself like that. And it's really hilly out there and hot, but it was just cool because it was the first time I really got to experience the running community outside of the scholastic, like, world, because everybody was out having a good time and they would hang out at the media store back when I was on State Street. And it's just a big tradition. That race and the race down in Sea Isle are two of my all-time favorites, because I always see people from home, and people make it a point to go down, whether they're running it for fun or racing it, to like just make a whole day out of it. So that media has definitely got a special place in my heart for sure. And it was a blast this year. Besides that, I mean, I like Broad Street a lot. I still, again, have, I feel like I have plenty of marathons ahead of me. So New York's on my bucket list. That's a big one I've always wanted to do. So yeah, just trying to stay healthy for me is having that mix of, when I do the running club workouts, the workouts are preset based off what you're focusing on. So right now there are options for people training for the mile, with Westchester Mile coming up in a month. And then the marathon training cycle just started. So, I would say I'm mostly self-coached, in the sense that the runs I do outside of those workouts, I determine based off of, where I'm at currently with my fitness, meaning how much can I run right now where it makes sense based off what I've done previously. Like, I don't want to, like, even if I've ran a certain amount of mileage before, I'm not going to just jump right back into it. I've definitely learned over the years, slowly progressing and working in cross training, and strength work is key for me. I think any injury I've had, I've continued to pepper that in. So as much as I'm self-coached, as the years have gone on, I utilize the resources that are available to all of us in our running community, not just through the store, but having someone that was like our sports massage person that worked on us in college has gotten connected with our running groups recently. Jim Early, he helps me, just stay ahead any injuries and things like that. There's a PT, Chris Cush, that he's helped kind of have a 360 view on some of my imbalances running wise and having good exercises to work in, daily or a couple times during the week to help me stay healthy that way. And then, with our, owners, Bob and Sean, and their experience, Bob Schwelm is actually, he is going for the next time he runs a marathon, I'm sure he'll crush it. He'll be the first person or one of the first people to run under 3 hours in a marathon over 6 decades. So he's got a lot of experience. There's not a race I'm going to run that he hasn't ran a million times and can like tell me all about it. So like when we were talking about Peachtree this past week, he's like, man, that second half, I'm like, I know, with the hills and the heat, and he's just, he's in the running Hall of Fame, and it's so cool. I learned more now about triathlons through our owner Sean, and my buddy Leo I get to work with at the store. They're really into the triathlon, so it's cool. Like starting to look at how that swimming. I was never a big swimmer, but swimming and cycling, how you factor that in. So yeah, I try to use those resources and then kind of say, what can I do around my own schedule? And it just gives me it gives me flexibility, but I have confidence I have people I can turn to when I need some advice.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't even picture you having I guess I should have known because we talked about the running community and all the people, but like that was such a great list of different kinds of resources that are around you, but also that kind of are around all of us that we can use, if we needed to.
Yeah. And it's not something you have to, I think all those relationships started with, getting right into it right away and like, going to see Jim like a couple times a month, and I have an injury, I'm seeing Chris a couple times a week to get through it. And they've grown into having constant communication and just like staying in touch. But even just checking in with somebody like that once a month, like even just having somebody to talk to about like things running and otherwise too, like that's a great outlet. That's been super helpful. And yeah, like you said, it's just those resources out there that we have, and sometimes it's a time thing, and it's also like setting up being able to go see them. Like we're very fortunate that most of those people are in our backyard, so you don't have to travel down to the city or drive super far away. You can see, I've been fortunate enough to be able to connect with a lot of different PTs. So when people that come in, they're looking for advice, like we can even match people with like just your style and like what you would prefer. Some people are a little bit, like when I've gotten muscle therapy stuff done, some people are a little bit more aggressive. Some people will do more like stretching and mobility stuff. So yeah, it's cool. Yeah. I've grown to appreciate it more over the years. I definitely, especially coming from a small high school, and there were definitely times I was coaching myself back then without any guidance. I realize now the best you can do is ask somebody for help, and it never does you wrong. And then you have somebody else that feels, gratitude and, feel like they're being valued for their advice too. So it's a very good back and forth.
Yeah, I feel like that's a perfect place to end because I don't think I could have said anything else better at that point. But before I let you go, can you remind everybody, I know we talked about the store, but where is the store? What's the store called?
Yep. So so I'm Ed from the Bryn Mawr Running Company in Westchester. Our address is 24B South High Street. So if you're familiar with downtown Westchester, we are right across the street from the Westchester Barnaby's, right in between Eclat Chocolate and A Taste of Olive. And we're on the same block as the High Street parking garage. We're open 7 days a week. Wednesdays and Thursdays, we're open a little bit later till 7 p.m. for anybody. It's a little bit easier to come after work, but 10 to 5 most other days, and then 12 to 4 on Sunday. And yeah, we help not just runners, walkers, just anybody who's active. When people ask what's like the number one thing you hear when people come in, it's like, well, I'm not really a runner, but it makes such a big difference getting in a good pair. It's something that we're passionate about. So we like sharing that with people. And, like we have some new staff that we've been training recently. And the first thing I always harp on is, listen to somebody's story, because, that's one of the coolest ways that we get to connect with people outside of just fitting them. Cause in our way, we want to be a positive part of your running journey. Just like I was talking about those other resources, like we want to be a resource for that with the footwear. You come in, you have a good experience, you can trust in that we're taking care of you and we have your best interest at heart. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time. And then thank you for all the great information about shoes and then sharing really cool stuff about running and the running community and everything that you had to say today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So I just want to thank Ed again for his time. That was such a great interview, so much helpful information, and also just so fun to get to talk about running shoes. He has been so supportive of me and my running club and helping, spread the word on all the cool things we're doing. He's also just been so supportive in the community with all of the runners. Anybody who's local, definitely go check out the running store, get yourself a new pair of shoes. Also check out all of the great community events and runs that he had mentioned in our interview. I need to go get a new pair of running shoes soon, so can't wait to go get that done. Also can't wait to get lapped by Ed in another race anytime soon. Maybe not in the heat, but come fall, I'll be there. Again, super helpful. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed talking about shoes or hearing us talk about shoes. Coming up in our next couple episodes, we switch gears a little bit. We're talking more about the mental side of things. We talked to a sports psychiatrist, performance coaches, mindfulness coaches, and really get into the mental side of things. So we go a little bit away from running, but we try to sprinkle some running stuff in there as well. So hopefully you enjoy that also. And again, any questions, comments, anything, well, if it's about shoes, make sure you direct it to Ed at the Bryn Mawr Running Company. If it's anything else, make sure you email me. Thank you for tuning into Raising Runners. New episodes every Tuesday, and we are always looking to talk to people about running, mental health, or anything along the spectrum that can help our young athletes, or just talking to runners or parents and coaches of our young runners as well. Hopefully you find our resources helpful. If you have questions, comments, or anything else, feel free to email me at marikeyrunclub@gmail.com.